You ever feel like trouble shows up the moment you finally decide to stay quiet? The words weren't loud, not even spoken to anyone in particular, just a low breath that barely fogged the inside of the windshield. But somehow they carried weight, like they had been said 1,000 times before and never answered. And outside, under the dim glow of a flickering gas station, lights somewhere off Route 17, the night felt heavier than it should have, thick with humidity and the distant hum of engines passing by at 70 miles an hour, while Marcus Reed sat behind the wheel of his 18-wheeler, hands resting steady on the worn leather, eyes forward, not searching, not reacting, just present, the kind of stillness that didn't come from comfort but from practice, years of choosing silence over escalation, patience over pride. The radio crackled softly beside him, a late-night host talking about a veteran who never made it home the same way he left, and for a brief second, Marcus reached out and turned the volume down until it was nothing but static, because some stories didn't need to be heard twice, not when they already lived under your skin, and that's when the first sound hit, not loud, not dramatic, just a dull tap against the side mirror, like someone testing a boundary rather than breaking it, followed by laughter, low and careless, the kind that echoed longer than it should in an empty place. And Marcus didn't turn his head, didn't shift in his seat, didn't even blink differently, because he had learned something a long time ago, that attention was currency, and not every moment deserved to be paid. But the air outside shifted anyway, footsteps crunching slowly over gravel, voices overlapping, one louder than the rest, confident in a way that didn't need permission. And still Marcus stayed still, his reflection faint in the glass, broad shoulders, calm eyes, a man most people would reduce to what they could see in 5 seconds or less. And the flicker of light above cast brief shadows across the truck's hood, stretching, shrinking, like the night itself was breathing. And somewhere behind him, a car door slammed, sharp enough to cut through the quiet, followed by another round of laughter, closer now, circling, testing, waiting, and Marcus exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that didn't release tension but acknowledged it, his fingers tightening just enough around the wheel to remind himself where he was, not somewhere else, not back there, just here. And the silence inside the cab felt louder than anything outside, like the pause before something decided what it wanted to become. And still, he didn't move, not yet, because sometimes the strongest thing a man could do was nothing at all, and sometimes that choice cost more than anyone watching could understand. The laughter outside did not fade. It sharpened, stretching thinner and closer like a wire pulled tight, and Marcus could feel it without looking. The way you feel heat from a fire before you ever see the flame. His fingers loosened slightly on the wheel, then rested again, deliberate, controlled, as if every small movement had already been rehearsed somewhere deep in his memory. The side mirror caught a flicker of motion, silhouettes shifting under that unstable yellow light, one figure stepping forward while the others hung back just enough to watch, to record, to turn a moment into something they could replay later without ever understanding it. And still Marcus did not turn, because he had learned that once you gave a situation your eyes, it often asked for more, your voice, your reaction, your energy, and he had spent years unlearning that instinct. The radio hummed faintly, almost like it was waiting for him to turn it back up, to fill the space with something safer, something distant. But he left it quiet, choosing instead the steady rhythm of his own breathing, in and out, slow enough to anchor him in the present. Outside a voice cut through the others, louder, confident, trying to claim the moment before it even unfolded, and Marcus caught a word here and there, nothing clear, nothing important, just tone, just intent, and that was enough, because tone told you everything words tried to hide. His gaze shifted slightly now, not toward them, but toward the dashboard, where a small, worn photograph sat tucked into the corner, edges soft from time. A reminder of a life measured in quieter victories, in people who saw him without needing explanation, and for a second, just a second, something in his expression softened, not weakness, not fear, just memory, and then it was gone, replaced by that same steady calm, the kind that did not react but observed, the kind that waited. The truck creaked faintly as the night air settled against its frame, metal expanding and cooling in slow, patient rhythms, and outside the footsteps came closer, gravel shifting under weight, a hand brushing lightly against the side of the trailer with a dull, hollow sound that echoed longer than it should have. Testing again. Always testing, and Marcus finally moved. Not toward them, not away, just a small adjustment in his seat. Enough to ease the pressure in his back, enough to remind himself that he was still in control of something. Even if it was only his own posture, his own breath, his own choice not to rush into what the moment was trying to become, because moments like this had a way of escalating on their own, feeding off reaction, growing louder, sharper, until they demanded something irreversible. And Marcus had seen what happened when people answered too quickly, when pride stepped in before judgment, when emotion filled the space where patience should have been, and he had promised himself a long time ago that he would not be that man again. Not here, not now, not for this. Outside, the voices dipped for a second, a pause. Brief, but noticeable. Like even they were waiting to see what he would do, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was charged, suspended, as if the night itself was holding its breath. And inside the cab, Marcus Reed did the only thing he trusted in moments like this. He stayed exactly where he was, letting the tension build without feeding it, knowing that what came next would say more about them than it ever would about him. The pause outside did not break all at once. It unraveled slowly, like tension losing patience with itself, and then a knuckle tapped lightly against the driver's side door. Not hard, not aggressive, just enough to demand attention without earning it. And Marcus let the sound sit there for a moment, hanging between reaction and restraint, before he finally turned his head just enough for his eyes to meet the reflection in the glass. Not the faces directly, just shapes, outlines, movement, because reflections told the truth without inviting confrontation, and one figure leaned closer, his outline sharper now, posture loose but deliberate, the kind of stance that came from being watched and knowing it. And Marcus could see the phone in his hand, angled just right, capturing everything, waiting for something worth replaying, and that small detail shifted the air more than the voices ever could. Because this was no longer just a moment, it was a performance, and Marcus understood that better than they did, understood how quickly a situation could become a story that forgot its beginning and exaggerated its end. His jaw tightened slightly, not in anger, but in recognition. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, even, carrying just enough to reach the space outside without filling it. You do not need to do this. The words landed without force, without challenge, just a statement placed carefully into the moment like a boundary drawn in sand, and for a second, just a second, the movement outside slowed, the kind of hesitation that flickers and disappears before most people notice it. But Marcus did, he always did, because hesitation was where choices lived, and then it passed, replaced by a short laugh, louder than before, more certain, as if the response had confirmed something they already believed. The figure straightened, stepping back just enough to reclaim the center of the space, and the others shifted with him, subtle but coordinated, like they were orbiting the same gravity, and Marcus leaned back slightly in his seat, not retreating, just creating space between himself and the glass, his hands resting open now on his thighs, no longer gripping anything. A posture that looked passive but was anything but. Outside, another voice cut in, quicker, less confident, overlapping the first, and Marcus caught the difference immediately, one voice leading, the other following, one pushing forward, the other trying to keep up. And somewhere in that mix, there was uncertainty, thin but present, and Marcus let his eyes settle there, not on the loudest one, but on the quieter movement at the edge, a younger figure, shifting weight from one foot to the other, not fully committed to the moment, but not stepping away either, and that detail lingered longer than the rest, because it reminded him of something he could not ignore, that not everyone in a moment chose it the same way, that some were pulled into it, shaped by it, defined by it before they ever understood it. The truck's engine clicked softly as it cooled, a steady ticking that filled the silence between words, and Marcus breathed in slowly, the air inside the cab warm, grounded, real, and when he exhaled, it was not to release tension, but to steady what came next, because the moment had shifted again, past testing, past waiting, into something that would not dissolve on its own. And Marcus knew that standing still had brought him exactly where he needed to be, right at the edge of a decision that would define everything that followed, not just for him, but for them too. The space outside tightened again, not with noise this time, but with expectation, the kind that builds when words stop working and something else tries to take their place. And Marcus felt it before he moved, a shift in the rhythm of footsteps, a change in how close the shadows leaned toward the truck, like the moment itself had decided it was done waiting. And for the first time since it began, Marcus reached for the door handle, not quickly, not with force, just a steady motion that carried intention without aggression. And when the door opened, it did so with a low, heavy sound that cut through the air more than any voice had. And he stepped down onto the gravel, boots landing firm but quiet, shoulders relaxed, posture grounded, not towering, not shrinking, just present in a way that did not ask for space but did not give it away either. The yellow light above flickered again, catching the edge of his face. The calm in his eyes clearer now, not distant, not detached, just focused. And for a brief second the circle around him shifted, not breaking, not stepping back, but adjusting, recalibrating to the fact that he was no longer behind glass, no longer a shape in reflection. Now he was real, and that changed things whether they admitted it or not. Marcus did not look at the one holding the phone first, did not meet the loudest voice head on. Instead, his gaze moved across the group slowly, deliberately, taking in each face, each stance, each hesitation that tried to hide behind confidence. And when his eyes passed over the younger one again, the one who had not fully settled into the moment, something paused there, not long, just enough to be noticed, just enough to be felt, and then it moved on, because this was not about one person, it was about the space they had created together, the pressure they were all standing inside. And Marcus spoke again, his voice the same as before, low, even, unhurried. You can still walk away. No demand, no edge, just truth laid down where everyone could hear it. And for a second the night held that sentence like it did not know what to do with it. The flicker of light above buzzing softly, the distant highway continuing its endless motion, indifferent to what was unfolding here. And one of them shifted his weight, another glanced sideways, the smallest fractures appearing in something that had looked solid moments ago. But the one in front, the one who had stepped forward first, let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost, and took a half step closer, not enough to close the distance, just enough to challenge it. And Marcus did not respond to that movement, did not mirror it, did not retreat. He simply stood, hands open at his sides, shoulders steady, breathing measured. And in that stillness, there was something harder to read than anger, something that did not match the script they had come here expecting. And that mismatch lingered, stretched, pressing against the edges of the moment until it became uncomfortable in a way none of them had planned for. And Marcus felt it, the shift, subtle but real, the moment bending slightly under the weight of a choice that had not been made yet. And he knew that whatever came next would not be about proving strength, it would be about what kind of strength he chose to show. The tension did not explode, it thickened, pressing in from every side like the humid air before a storm. And Marcus stood in the center of it without shifting his feet, without raising his voice, his presence steady in a way that did not match the energy around him. And that difference began to irritate the space itself, the kind of irritation that comes when something refuses to react the way it is expected to. One of them stepped closer again, faster this time, not aggressive in motion but careless, testing the boundary Marcus had drawn with nothing but words. And another voice followed, sharper, layered with a forced confidence that tried to cover something thinner underneath. And Marcus heard it clearly, not the words, but the strain behind them, the need to prove something in front of the others. And that need pushed the moment forward more than anything else could. The circle tightened by inches, not coordinated but inevitable, each small step adding weight to a situation that was already heavy, gravel shifting under shoes, the faint scrape of movement echoing louder than it should. And Marcus did not step back, did not step forward. He simply adjusted his stance slightly, grounding himself more firmly, his boots settling into the uneven surface as if he had stood in places like this before, places where the air itself seemed to lean in and watch. His hands remained open, relaxed at his sides, fingers loose, no tension visible. But there was something else there. Now, something beneath the calm, not anger, not fear, something quieter, more deliberate, like a switch that had been acknowledged but not yet touched. and his eyes moved again, not quickly, not scanning for threat, just observing, noticing how the group no longer moved as one, how small gaps had formed between them, how the younger one lingered a step behind, uncertain, how even the loudest voice now paused between words, waiting for a reaction that did not come, and that waiting began to stretch into discomfort, because silence has a way of turning confidence inward, forcing it to question itself, and Marcus let that silence grow, did not fill it, did not ease it, because sometimes the most powerful thing in a moment is the space you refuse to close. And then one of them reached out, not striking, not forceful, just a brief, thoughtless push against his shoulder, the kind of contact meant more to provoke than to harm, and Marcus absorbed it without resistance, his body shifting with it just enough to keep balance, just enough to show he was aware, and when he settled again, he looked directly at the one who had stepped forward, not with challenge, not with anger, just with clarity, and in that look there was something unfamiliar, something that did not match the situation they thought they controlled, and the night seemed to quiet for a second, the flickering light above buzzing softly, the distant highway humming like it always had, indifferent, and Marcus spoke one more time, his voice lower now, not louder, just deeper, carrying weight instead of volume. This is where it stops. No threat, no warning, just a line placed firmly in the ground, and for a brief moment, everything hesitated, the laughter gone, the movement slowed, the air itself holding still, because something had shifted, something none of them could fully explain, and in that shift, the moment stood balanced on a single choice, one step forward or one step back, and Marcus did not move, because he had already chosen. The moment did not break the way anyone expected, it stretched instead, thinning into something fragile, something that could snap in either direction, and Marcus felt it settle into his chest like a weight he recognized, not from fear, but from memory, the kind that does not fade with time, only quiets until something like this brings it back, and the rain that had started as a soft mist now grew steadier, tapping against metal, against pavement, against skin, each drop small but constant, filling the silence that no one seemed willing to break, and Marcus lowered his gaze for just a second, not in defeat, not in retreat, but in reflection, his breath slow, measured, the rhythm of it grounding him in a way nothing else could, and for a brief moment, the gas station lights, the gravel, the voices, all of it blurred at the edges, replaced by something older, something louder, the echo of commands shouted over chaos, the sharp crack of distant thunder that was never just thunder, the weight of responsibility that came without warning and never really left, and his hand twitched slightly at his side, not from tension, but from restraint, because he remembered exactly what it meant to act without hesitation, to move faster than thought, to finish what others started, and he also remembered what it cost, the faces that stayed long after the moment ended, the silence that followed when everything else stopped, and that memory settled into him now, not as a warning, but as a choice, the kind that had to be made again and again, not just once, and when he lifted his head, the rain traced lines down his face, mixing with the dim light above, softening the edges of everything, even the people standing in front of him, who now looked less certain, less fixed in whatever role they thought they were playing. One of them shifted back half a step, barely noticeable, but enough. Another lowered his phone slightly, the angle no longer perfect, no longer capturing what he thought he would, and the younger one, the one at the edge, stared at Marcus in a way that was different now, not challenging, not mocking, just watching, trying to understand something that did not fit into the moment he had expected. And Marcus let his shoulders drop just a fraction, not relaxing, but releasing what did not need to be held, and his voice, when it came again, was quieter than before, almost lost under the sound of the rain. "You do not need to carry this," he said, not to all of them, not even to the one in front, but somewhere in between, somewhere that reached the part of the moment that had not fully hardened yet, and the words did not land like a command. They settled, like something placed gently into the space rather than forced into it. And for a second, the night responded, not with movement, not with sound, but with a stillness that felt different, less tense, less sharp, as if something unseen had shifted just enough to be felt. And Marcus stood there, not waiting, not pushing, just present in that quiet, holding it long enough for it to mean something, long enough for someone to choose differently, if they were going to at all. The rain kept falling, steady now, not heavy enough to force anyone to move, but constant enough to settle into everything: clothes, skin, silence. And Marcus stood in the center of it, unmoving, his breath slow, his gaze level, the kind of stillness that did not invite action but did not avoid it either. And something about that stillness began to change the space again, not loudly, not all at once, but in small fractures that spread quietly through the group. The phone lowered another inch. The laughter did not return. The confident posture of the one in front no longer held as firmly as before, and it was not fear that moved through them. Not exactly. It was something more uncertain, something harder to name. The realization that the moment they had stepped into was not unfolding the way they had imagined, not following the script they had come prepared to perform, and Marcus saw it, not in their faces alone, but in the way their energy shifted, how the circle that once felt tight now seemed uneven, edges loosening, gravity weakening, and his eyes moved once more, not scanning, just noticing. And when they passed over his own reflection in the dark window of the truck behind him, something else caught the light, a small detail most people would not have seen unless they were looking closely: the edge of a faded emblem on his sleeve, barely visible beneath the damp fabric, a symbol worn thin by time but not erased. And one of them noticed it, not the loud one, not the one trying to lead, but someone slightly behind, someone who had been quiet up until now, and the shift in his posture was immediate, subtle but undeniable. His shoulders straightened not in challenge but in recognition, his gaze fixed not on Marcus's face but on that small, almost hidden mark. And for a second, just a second, everything slowed again. The rain, the breathing, the space between them, as if that detail carried a weight none of the others fully understood yet. And the one who had seen it took a half step back, instinctive, not discussed, not announced. Just done, and that movement rippled outward, not dramatically, but enough to be felt, enough to unsettle what little certainty remained. And Marcus did not acknowledge it directly, did not draw attention to it, because he did not need to. The truth of it was already there, already working through the moment in ways words never could. And when he finally spoke again, his voice was not louder, not sharper, just clearer. "You are not looking at what you think you are." And the sentence landed differently this time, not as a warning, not as a boundary, but as a revelation, something that asked them to reconsider everything they had assumed when they first stepped into this space. And the one in front hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough, enough for doubt to surface where certainty had been, enough for the others to feel it, to question it. And the night held that shift like it mattered, like something important had just been uncovered beneath the surface. And Marcus remained where he was, not stepping forward, not pressing the advantage that now quietly belonged to him, because this was never about overpowering the moment, it was about changing it, and that change had already begun. The shift did not explode into chaos, it softened, almost imperceptibly at first, like a knot loosening thread by thread, and Marcus could feel it in the way the space around him breathed again, not tight and sharp like before, but uneven, uncertain, searching for something new to settle into. And the rain continued to fall, steady and patient, washing over everything without choosing sides. And one of them let out a breath that sounded different now, not forced, not performed, just real, like something inside him had finally exhaled after holding too long. And the one who had stepped back earlier lowered his gaze, not in defeat, but in recognition, as if the moment had revealed more than he was ready to carry. And Marcus did not move toward them, did not close the distance that had begun to widen on its own, because he understood something they were only just starting to feel, that once a moment begins to change, forcing it only breaks what could have been rebuilt. And his eyes found the younger one again, the one standing at the edge. And this time there was no tension in that gaze, no challenge, just a quiet acknowledgement, a question that did not need to be spoken. And the young man shifted, his shoulders dropping slightly, the weight of the situation no longer sitting where it had before. And Marcus spoke, not loudly, not for everyone, just enough for that space between them to carry it. "You do not have to prove anything tonight." And the words landed softer than the rain, but somehow deeper, settling into a place that had not been reached before. and the young man blinked, just once, but it was enough to break whatever hold the moment had on him, his hand lowering completely now, whatever he had been holding forgotten, unnecessary, and the one in front, the one who had tried to lead, glanced sideways for the first time, not checking for approval, but noticing the change he could not control, and that realization flickered across his face, brief but undeniable, the loss of something he thought he had, and Marcus did not press it, did not speak again to claim that shift, because this was not about winning, not about standing over anyone or proving anything to a crowd. It was about letting the moment end without becoming something worse, and he took a small step back, not retreating, just creating space where there had been none, and that single movement gave them something they had not expected, an exit, a way out that did not feel like surrender, and one by one, not dramatically, not all at once, the circle loosened, the edges breaking apart into individuals again instead of a single force, and the rain filled the gaps they left behind, quiet and steady, and Marcus watched them without judgment, without relief, just with the same calm he had carried from the beginning, because he knew this was the part most people misunderstood, that walking away was not weakness, that restraint was not failure, that sometimes the strongest thing a person could do was leave a moment better than they found it. And as the space around him cleared, the silence returned, but it was different now, not heavy, not waiting, just still, like something had ended exactly where it needed to. The rain began to ease, not stopping completely, just softening into something lighter, almost like the night itself was exhaling after holding too much for too long. And Marcus stood there for a moment longer, not because he needed to, but because leaving too quickly would have broken something he had just worked to preserve, and the empty space around him no longer felt like pressure, it felt earned. The kind of quiet that comes after a decision has been made and accepted, and slowly, without urgency, he turned back toward his truck, each step steady against the damp gravel, the soft crunch under his boots echoing just enough to remind him he was still here, still present, still in control of where the moment ended. And when he reached the door, he paused briefly, his hand resting against the cool metal, water tracing lines down its surface, catching the faint glow of the overhead light, and for a second, his reflection looked back at him, older than the man he remembered in other places, in other uniforms, but steadier too, shaped not by what he had done, but by what he had chosen not to do. And he climbed back into the cab with the same calm he had carried through the night, closing the door with a low, final sound that settled into the silence like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Inside, the air was warmer, quieter, the faint scent of worn leather and long miles grounding him again. And the radio still hummed softly where he had left it, a voice talking about something distant, something that no longer mattered here. And Marcus reached out, not to turn it up, but to switch it off completely, choosing silence instead, because some moments deserve to be remembered without distraction. And he sat there for a second, hands resting loosely on the wheel, eyes forward, not replaying what had happened, not questioning it, just letting it settle where it belonged, and outside. The figures that had once filled the space were gone now. No sudden movements, no lingering noise, just absence, as if the night had absorbed them back into itself. And Marcus started the engine, the deep rumble rising steadily beneath him, familiar, constant, a reminder that life kept moving whether moments like this happened or not. And as the headlights cut through the dim light ahead, illuminating the wet pavement in a long, clear path, he eased the truck forward, not rushing, not lingering, just continuing. And in the rearview mirror, the gas station grew smaller, its flickering light fading into the distance until it was just another point in the dark, another place where something could have gone differently, but did not. And Marcus did not look back again, because he did not need to. The lesson of the night was already with him, carried not in words, but in the quiet certainty that strength was not in what you could do, but in what you chose to hold back. And as the road stretched out ahead, long and open under the fading rain, the only sound left was the steady rhythm of the engine and the soft whisper of tires against wet asphalt. And in that quiet, there was something deeper than victory, something closer to peace, the kind that did not need to be proven, only lived.